Hi, I'm Connor Fowler,
And I'm Matt Smith.
and you are listening to Apocalypse Duds. Here today, we are joined by the secondhand sniper, the persnickety picker, the emperor of eBay, the big dog bidder, the secondhand chic, the menswear mercenary, the god of Grail, the righteous lord of Ralph Lauren, the engineer of garments, the entrepreneur with the thrift store score. Here's Ken Pickart. Ken, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I think that's my new Instagram bio right there. That's amazing.
Dude, yes.
It's
please.
yours.
It is yours. Take it. Yeah, this has become one of the things that we love to do in the kind of run up to the show, is to just figure out this ridiculous shit that we can say about every person.
Yeah, I really enjoy the engineer of garments. It's amazing.
I got to take credit for that one.
Yeah, that was Matt. That was
Hell
Matt.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So Ken, where did you grow up and where do you live now?
I grew up in Rhode Island, and I currently live in Vermont.
Okay. Yeah. What part of Rhode Island, or what place in Rhode Island, I guess I should say, because it's tiny.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I always say, if you're explaining where you live in Rhode Island to someone who has never been to the state, you either live at the beach or you live 20 minutes from Providence, and I fall into the 20 minutes from Providence camp.
Okay.
So
All
it's all kind of, all right. It's all
totally,
pretty close together. So
I spent some time in Providence. It's a cool little town.
All right.
Yeah.
No, I really like Providence. I actually did grow up, from age 5 to about 12, I lived in Providence proper. And then we moved to the suburbs, although I kind of just consider all of Rhode Island a suburb when I turned 12 or somewhere around there. So,
right.
Yeah, to be more specific, I live right on the Massachusetts border, which is a lot of Rhode Island as well, but gives you a sense of, a lot of our, my mom is a teacher in Massachusetts. My dad works in Massachusetts, even though we lived in Rhode Island. So
it is, it's geographically very tight.
Exactly. Yeah. And then, when I graduated high school, I went to college in Boston, and, at the time, being in this small state that only takes an hour to drive, going to Boston felt like this really far away place. But now that I've moved even farther away from home, I realize that, it's only an hour drive from Boston to where my parents live, and that's actually very close to each other. So
Totally. That's the beauty of New England in general. Just
yeah, exactly.
Outside of maybe Maine, I guess, which is kind of big, but compared to southern states, not really.
Yeah, well, and the other part with Maine too is that it's only the southern half that's really populated, and most people actually don't live in the majority of Maine. So,
how did you dress while you were growing up, and how did your parents dress? Did that have some influence on you?
Yeah, I definitely think that my parents had an influence on me in that way. Growing up, I don't necessarily remember my younger years. I really only start to think about how I dressed in my teens. But to give you some context, I went to a Catholic private school, and we had a dress code, and this was from first grade to senior year.
Wow.
Oxford shirt, khakis, optional sweater if you're feeling cold. As I got into high school, I think it was, a polo shirt. All of these things are embroidered with the school's logo. So my day to day was wearing that. And of course, summers or time off, I kind of had some casual clothing, but it wasn't something I really thought about at all. In regards to how my parents dressed, my dad is a big outdoorsman, grew up, he was a rock climber, mountain climber, and then kind of got into environmental science. And so he's kind of always had this, outdoorsman clothes, REI, that type of thing. And he would, occasionally have to wear a sport coat and tie to go to work, but that was kind of the odd meeting. And then my mom, she's a knitter, so she makes her own sweaters, and I think that definitely influences her style. I do know in like the 80s she was really into kind of the Ralph Lauren preppy thing, and kind of as I was growing up, she kind of, you know, started to introduce more of a bohemian kind of hippie vibe. And I think, yeah, that combo of like preppy and hippie, I think actually describes my mom. My mom's like whole personality pretty well, you know. So
Yeah, that's kind of awesome, man. Like in ways like a very New England type of uh environment that you were in, but also like,
exactly.
also there's a little bit of the counterculture there and the like crunchiness
Yeah,
of
yeah,
that I guess most people wouldn't necessarily think about in New England,
yeah.
back
No, I
then
think
at
there's
least.
yeah, no, there's definitely like my grandmother was a big Deadhead, and
Oh,
my mom would go to shows with her at one point, and yeah, like there's definitely kind of like a you know, a bit of a hippie culture that kind of comes with living in New England. That's kind of maybe lesser known, or kind of the intersection of that with kind of like yuppie culture, and kind of a really interesting Venn diagram there. So
right. Yeah, totally, totally. And wait, Ken, just out of curiosity, how old are you?
I am. That's a good question. No, I'm 31. At least
You're
I think.
31 now?
Yep, 31.
Okay. All right. So yeah, that like I guess your mom probably would have been going to like some of the, 70s, 80s dead shows.
Yeah,
Like,
she was. I think like they were kind of when my mom would go with my grandmother to dead shows. I want to say it was in the like late 80s was kind of, and they would go to a lot of Jerry Garcia band shows too when
oh,
the
that's gnarly.
dead wasn't playing. So yeah, it's pretty sweet. I've actually kind of like gone through, you sat down with my grandmother and kind of been like, what shows were you at, and had to show her how like there's recordings of every show online, and I would play her some of the shows that
Oh,
she
dude,
went
that's
to.
amazing. Are
Yeah,
you
that
into like the Dead and
Oh yeah,
whatnot?
yeah, you know, it's something growing up. My mom had kind of fallen out from that scene and just like didn't listen to it at all when I was growing up. And it was only maybe 4 or 5 years ago that I started listening to the Dead and really fell in with them. And then had to start talking to my mom and my grandmother about their stories, and you know, kind of hearing their experience with the band, which was really cool.
Oh, hell yeah, hell yeah. I do
Yeah,
have a follow up question to the uniform Catholic school thing.
yeah, absolutely.
What shoes did you wear?
That's actually kind of an interesting question, because the rules were always kind of changing around like what shoes you were supposed to wear. I distinctly remember for maybe the first grade to about third or fourth grade, we were supposed to wear dress shoes, and
Okay.
my mom took this as buy me a pair of Doc Martens. So because I think she was like, you're a kid, you need something that can get beat up, why are they putting you in dress shoes when you're a child? So
Right.
I think I had a pair of black Doc Martens, like the classic Oxford, that
Oh,
I wore.
nice.
And then I do remember there being a point which was really exciting, is that they allowed us to wear sneakers, but they had to be all black or all brown, and you weren't allowed to have any like
Mm.
colored branding on them. So that was very key. Now I remember being really excited because I was, just starting to get into skateboarding around when I was 8 or 9, and I remember being really excited that I got an all black pair of ES skate shoes, which were I don't remember who skated for him at the time, but it was somebody that I idolized, and it was really cool to be able to wear my skate shoes to school. And then going through high school, I think it was kind of a similar rule where it was, you could wear sneakers, but they had to basically not be particularly gaudy. Although I definitely remember kind of in my later years at the school, we would really not pay attention to that, and that was kind of when the really loud Nike Dunks and that kind of thing were coming into popularity. And we definitely wore some loud sneakers, and would kind of be told like, hey, take those off, and we'd have to stick them in our lockers for the day. And you
Yeah.
know
It's like you got a backup pair in the locker that are just like your
exactly.
skate shoes. But
Yep.
oh, that's so funny.
Yep. Yeah, so it's, definitely interesting, like, and I think, thinking back in high school, like a lot of like how I dressed outside of school was more or less just kind of aligning myself with like my music tastes and my skateboarding, so it was like, you'd wear a skate tee and skinny jeans or a band tee and,
Right.
kind of like black or red or black jeans if you had a colored shirt on, that kind of thing. Cause I definitely kind of fell into that kind of like alternative rock, like emo quote unquote wave that kind of happened in the mid 2000s. So
Okay. Yeah, we talk a lot on the show about the like the correlation between being in some sort of subculture, be it music or skateboarding or whatever,
mhm.
and then also being into like clothing, because I think they're very related.
Oh yeah, no, I definitely think so, because I think like, people who aren't necessarily tied to a subculture, like, I mean, I guess I can't speak for those people necessarily, but in my high school, it was like, outside of, we'd have dress down days or, after school dances, that type of thing. And, a lot of my classmates would wear, Abercrombie and, Birkenstock Bostons, and they kind of had this uniform, polo shirts, rugby shirts were really big. And like, I never identified with that. So I feel like, having to think about like, okay, I want to be different. So how do I, if that means I'm different, of course, looking back, I think I dressed like a lot of my friends and a lot of people at that time who kind of were into these types of bands or, kind of identified with skateboarding and that kind of thing.
Totally.
So, is there a point that you realized that you were more interested in clothing than your peers?
It took a while. I would say, I definitely like starting to get ready for college. I started thinking more about, okay, I'm not just going to wear band tees all the time. And,
Hmm.
I don't have a uniform to wear every day. So that was kind of when I started getting into thrift shopping. Although, can't say I knew particularly what I was doing back then, but I would, buy flannel shirts. I remember there was a leather like rider jacket that I had. Actually, I think it was like a cafe racer that I had that I wore. And that was kind of like my freshman year of college. Like I really bought a lot of things from thrift stores. And I also, right before I started college, I had a summer job working at a Levi's outlet. And I think that kind of also started planting the seeds of being into clothes. I bought a pair of, well, they give you a pair of jeans when you start to work there. So you have a pair of jeans to work to your job. And I
So
got
like
a,
501 strength to fits or
I did. Well, so yeah, that's what I was gonna say is that I got a pair of 501 shrink to fix. You were allowed to pick out anything, and for some reason I
oh,
was
okay,
really
gotcha. I didn't know if there was
really
like a
drawn to that.
yeah, like I was some for some reason imagining just like a massive table with a bunch of sizes of 501s
Yes,
because
and
that's what you
this is
wanted to
the
wear.
employee uniform.
Yeah,
Yeah, no,
right.
yeah,
This and a flannel
no,
shirt and some work boots, man. You're good to go.
that would have been our store. Our store would have been a lot cooler if that was the case. We were in like an outlet mall that was, very much like our customer base was like foreign. We would kind of get like, people who are on visiting United States like would uh, get on a bus and get dropped off at our outlets and then come shop. So and when we start there, they would be like, it basically just be like pick out a pair of jeans in your size and you get comped them. So but for some reason, I decided to go 501 shrink to fits. I don't know how I knew about that, but I just thought it was really cool. And yeah, that was kind of my first foray into like, workwear and denim and that kind of thing.
All right. Where was the outlet,
So,
Ken?
This was in Rentham, Mass. So
Okay,
if you've been to Providence, like that's kind of the closest like outlet mall to
gotcha,
Providence. Hmm.
gotcha.
so we were wondering then, as your sort of burgeoning interest in clothing grew, how the message boards and time sharpened your interest.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's really like how I got into all of this. I had a Tumblr, and I honestly don't know how I started following menswear blogs. I one of the early ones I remember looking at was Put This On and kind of being intrigued by it. I'm sure it had, I remember kind of having a Tumblr right around when I graduated high school. So, I definitely think there was, trying to figure out how I should dress now that I'm going to college and I don't wear my uniform anymore. I think that had a play in it, and maybe that's how I came across this stuff. But that's really how I got into it, was just reading blogs and kind of being into Tumblr. I eventually made a style forum account because I had some questions to ask people. Now I don't remember what those were, but whatever, how to size something or something like that. I think that's how everybody had signed up for a style forum at some point
Oh, totally,
in their past.
totally.
So, and
Also,
then,
just shout out Tumblr and Style Forum, because
yeah,
you guys form the basis for a lot. Like, we wouldn't be doing this fucking show if there wasn't Tumblr and Style Forum.
Exactly. No, I mean, I definitely, like, I started getting into menswear right when there was, like a quote unquote menswear boom. And it was, really interesting. And, at the time, I think I was, reading a lot about like Ivy style and that kind of like classic thing. And then, simultaneously, like, in Boston, we had the Ralph Lauren rugby store, and it was kind of like spitting back out Ivy style for younger people. And I was eating that up. I mean, I any spare Christmas money, whatever money I had, I would spend at, the rugby sale and get as many pairs of chinos as I can, which is, really funny thinking about a kid who went to
the
art
university
school,
chino,
spending
right?
his money there. The university chino. I love that. Yeah, I had at least 3 or 4 pairs. And yeah, it's just funny because, I also, like, leaving out part of the story is that I went to art school and I studied printmaking. So it was kind of funny that I was getting into these kind of like classic, like preppy styles while I'm going to the school where, people are dressed however the hell they want. A lot of people kind of dressed like, associated with subcultures, be that like punk or, that type of thing. And then I kind of took that like, oh, to go against the grain here, I'm going to dress preppy,
Right,
and wear,
right.
and, and mind you, there is a precedent for that. I think like David Hockney is someone who, dress kind of has this like classical sense of dress, but is an artist. And I find that really fascinating. So,
yeah, I mean, guys like him and like Warhol and, like the people that have been, I don't know, iconic darlings and for anyone that's like into clothing, like they all had their own thing going on, and they were like, oh, like I love Brooks Brothers, I love, a prep kind of like trad vibe, and so
yeah, and
they kind of turn it on its head.
Yep, yeah, and they're definitely kind of people that you associate with, having a uniform. There's also was it Bill Cunningham, who was the kind of street photographer who always wore the French blue short coat, and like that kind of thing really appealed to me, as kind of having this like, I'm a creative person, but like I wear a kind of wear clothes that follow rules, but then I don't follow rules in my creative process, that kind of thing. I think it really resonated with me in college. And I also started working like, part-time, and then eventually came full-time as like a desk job in an office, being an administrative assistant. And it was also convenient that my clothing tastes were business appropriate. So
right.
Yeah.
I feel like you were going through this in college while I was like in New York, kind of in the menswear industry at this point, and like we both had very very similar ideas about shit. Like, I definitely got a French work jacket because, one, I thought they looked cool as fuck. 2, I saw Bill Cunningham in it, and I was like, oh shit,
exactly.
Yeah, like, oh, this is actually something that like people are into and think is rad.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
So where did the style bitter idea come from?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, like it kind of predates, like, my selling used clothes online kind of predates style bitter. That kind of came a little bit further along down the line. But as I said, I was a college student who was getting into clothes, and I'd spend my money on sale clothes. And then I started, I knew about thrift shopping, just from high school, and kind of looking for something to do. And then kind of started going to all these thrift stores in Boston and being really blown away by the it's kind of classic menswear stuff that ended up in Boston. At that time, I would be reading online about Brooks Brothers, sack cut sport coat, and then I go to the thrift store and I'd find one and I go, wow,
Right.
this is amazing. And you know, especially with Boston kind of having that classic like trad you know, population. So yeah, I think like the first time I bought something specifically to sell though, I found maybe 5 or 6 Hermes dress shirts. And you know, I didn't know if they were real or not. I didn't know if they definitely didn't fit me, but I said, hey, these are $5 each. Like, I feel like I should take them home and, you know, post them on Style Forum and see what people think. And that was the first time I sold something. I think I actually posted it to like the Style Forum thrift thread, like, is this a thing? You know, because that's kind of
Right.
a trope in the Style Forum thrift thread. And I think I actually had someone DM me and say, yes, I would like to buy those from you. And I said, holy cow, like I could be buying stuff and selling it. And you know, it was always kind of a part-time thing that I was doing, you know, kind of outside of school. When I'd have some free time, I'd pop into, you know, a thrift store and pull out some stuff for me, some stuff to sell, and you know, put it on eBay when I had the time. And it wasn't really until I graduated college that I really kind of came up with the idea of it being called Style Bit, or the idea of having like branding and a website, and kind of, you know, this could be something more professional than just like me doing something in my free time, so I have a few extra bucks to buy some more stuff from the thrift store,
Oh,
basically.
totally,
So
totally.
yeah.
So
So go ahead.
no, you're the guest.
Oh yeah, no, I mean, I was just gonna say is that, like, you know, specifically like picking out the name like Style Bitter kind of happened as my partner, you know, my now fiance, then girlfriend, like she was working for a marketing software company. And like one of the things that they have you do as part of your orientation is, you know, the software hosts your website, and they have you create your own website with their product, and build your website on it. And you know, my partner was like, oh, you know, do you think that, you know, you would want to do your eBay thing on this? And because it's, you know, I'm basically getting free access to a, you know, a product that costs people money. And I said, yeah, why not? And, you know, I kind of tossed around a few ideas. And at the time, like I was running auctions on my eBay. So Style Bitter, and, you know, just kind of threw it together. Of course, now I kind of look back and I don't do any auctions anymore. So it's kind of
Yeah.
funny that, you know, something related to auctions is my name, but I
Eh,
just kind of
you
stuck with it. So
you gotta adapt, you know?
yeah, exactly.
Like you do this long enough, there's changes that you have to make because oh, this works better for me.
Oh
And
yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, no, big time. I mean, there's a lot that I've changed, you know, even from, yeah, when I first started, you know, to now, of course, you know, I mean, it's been 10 years. So, you know, a lot of things are going to change. But yeah, definitely like the way I run my business, I've learned so much about it as I've gone on, of course. So,
Was there a moment that you realized that you could do it full time? Like, I know that it was kind of a transition, right?
yeah, yeah. So, I mean, I had always wanted to do it full time. I mean, I'm just the type of person, and you know, I think Matt, we've related on this, is that I just don't like having a boss. I really,
Totally. Totally.
I have, you know, I've worked. There's been a couple good jobs that I've had with good bosses, but that is few and far between. So, you know, I really, you know, always kind of wanted to do it full time, but you know, didn't really know how to do it or know that I could support myself, you know, make enough to do it. Because I mean, I was, you know, maybe at the time, uh, before I started doing it full time, maybe spending, you know, 5, 6 hours a week on it. So, you know, the amount of return that I got from that was nowhere near what I needed to pay my bills.
Right.
But like what it took for me to actually do it and take the plunge of doing it full time was really moving somewhere rural where, you know, my cost of living went way down. My fiance having a really stable income, and kind of her encouraging me to be like, let's try to do this. So yeah, I mean, I owe a lot of my success to her, without a doubt. So
Fuck yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
There's like a moment when you're, you know, you've kind of been doing this for a while, part time as a hobby or like a way to just, you know, enjoy something. Like I love thrifting personally.
Hmm.
Uh, and you and I have talked about this before. You know, the things that we get out of it. Like even if I don't find shit, it's still
Hmm.
like an enjoyable time. But then like
Absolutely.
everyone, I feel like reaches that moment where it's like, okay, I can do this with the little effort that I put in, or I can do this with all the effort that I have and make it actually something. And
Yeah.
like, it's rad that that your fiance supported that kind of like thought
Yeah.
process with you.
Yeah. No, I mean, and to be honest too, like, as crazy as this is, like the pandemic really gave me this experience in a really backwards way.
Right. Yeah, dude. Same.
So,
Same.
it was kind of like being out of work. And then, on top of that, like we also like go before the pandemic, me and my fiance had actually moved to Ottawa, Ontario, as part of her, she had a job offer that she really wanted. And, you know, they relocated us there. And then 6 months later, the pandemic hit and we were basically kind of stranded in this foreign country. And we had some friends, but, didn't really get to see people or go see our families. And thankfully, like her company ended up going remote only. And they said, you can live wherever you want. And we had always kind of, when we lived in Boston, we'd spend our time in Vermont and like on weekends and that type of thing. And we said, well, here's our chance. And, we kind of found a place online, a rental, and said, let's give this a shot. And didn't really know much about the town we moved in to or anything like that. And kind of just pulled up and ended up working. And when we moved back to the States, I said, well, I had been out of work because of the pandemic for a little while then. And, it was kind of like, okay, I'm back and I can kind of get hands on this again. And let me just see if I can, make this work full time and just see what happens. And, give it a few months and see how it's doing. And, you really get what you put into it. And I'm sure you can relate to that, Matt. And it was just, wow, like I can sell so much more if I'm spending so much more time with it. And
Right.
yeah, definitely like saw the results. Although, it definitely takes its time for sure. But
Totally.
it helped that I had that base of, doing it part time for basically 8 years. That definitely helped with the transition into full time. So
Yeah, it's one of those things where like it prepares you in certain ways, but in other ways, like I don't know, there are various elements to it that you end up just being like, like we wanted to ask, like, has selling full time going from more of a hobby to like a way to make a living, as much as I hate that term, has that affected your passion for clothing at all?
In some, I don't think it's affected my passion for clothing. I still love clothing and getting to be around more of it is great. There's definitely like, I can look back to when I did this part time and kind of point to it being more of a fun, like, woohoo, I made a sale. I get to go, take my girlfriend out for dinner tonight. And now it's kind of more like, okay, I made a sale and I need to make 10 more today to meet the type of sales that I want to see.
Right,
So,
yeah.
some of the kind of the fun of it being a hobby was taken out doing it full time. But in terms of like being passionate about clothing, I think it's only strengthened it. Just being around it more, getting more into like, niche things has really, like helped up to my interest in it for sure.
Yeah, that's a great answer actually, because that it's nice to hear someone that like isn't jaded or cynical about shit. Like,
Yeah, I mean, I have my moments. Don't get me
oh,
wrong.
totally. So as we all do.
Yeah, I get it.
Like the love and the passion really, really shine through and like come down to something, even if you're, annoyed sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
It was a little bit of a loaded question, right? I mean, like we knew you weren't going to say like, "Yeah, fuck them. I don't like clothes at all anymore."
Yeah,
I mean,
but there's
like
definitely...
that's also the fashion industry in a lot of ways. Like,
yeah, absolutely.
Like anyone that works in clothing or like music or any other thing that I feel like can be a hobby, once you start doing that for your actual job to be able to eat, like I've seen it kill people's passion for shit.
So, oh, absolutely. And I mean, I'm not like, it didn't completely kill my passion, but like I have a similar experience where like before the pandemic, I was working in the craft beer industry and, it was something that I had been really interested in for a while. And, I enjoyed it. I met great people, but like my interest in it definitely waned from working in the industry and, kind of seeing all sides of it. You realize it's not as, glamorous as it seems when you go to a tap room and you talk to the bartender, so
right. Totally.
yeah.
Totally. like, man, I just want something to drink. Like, I don't,
Y-
I don't want to have to sell you on my beer all the time.
Yeah, yeah, or just like, have to work until, 1 a.m. cleaning up after a party and then get up the next day and get up early to help on the packaging line and all of that type of thing. It's it's hard work, and it goes the same with what I do now, where it's like it's hard work, and like you have to be invested in the overall thing, really invested if it's okay to make the hard work feel okay,
Yeah,
if that makes
for
sense.
sure, for
So,
sure.
your heart really needs to be in it. And yeah, I definitely selling clothing, I mean, anybody can do it. There's plenty of YouTubers out there now who are trying to sell you you can make X amount of money from home in your free time. And you can, but you have to be really passionate about it to stick with it and really know how to adapt to the changing market. So
For sure.
So I guess that maybe answers this question, but what do you think is the hardest part about selling clothes?
yeah, I definitely think like, yeah, having like the knowledge base built up, knowing what sells, what doesn't sell, knowing where to sell certain things. Cause I mean, that's something just this past year I started selling kind of at in person at like vintage market pop-up events. And I definitely like I started buying different things and seeing what stuck with different crowds, and even like I'll, from market to market, will kind of curate the selection of things that I bring. So I think that's definitely one, is kind of like knowing what to sell, knowing how to like adapt and what's popular. Because I mean, when I first started, like, I could buy any suit from an Italian tailor and put it up on eBay and have it sold in an hour for a decent amount of money. And now it's like, okay, like, yeah, I can't buy every piece from every Italian maker. It's, maybe only these three, and they have to be recently made and they have to be in pristine condition. So, kind of knowing how to adapt is definitely something that I think is tough. And the other thing I think just kind of goes to just kind of like a personal motivation thing, is like, you know, motivating yourself, when your own boss, when you are your own boss, is something that I've, had to learn how to deal with, and I still don't necessarily have down. But I one of the things I learned this year specifically is that, like, if you're consistent, whether it be like posting on Instagram or posting new listings, like you see consistent returns on that investment of time. And so that means you have to kind of like either plan out, things in advance so that you're able to stay consistent on a day-to-day basis and still afford yourself time off, or you have to kind of like, okay, well, this isn't getting done today, and that means that maybe I'm not selling as much this month. So I think that's kind of something that, and again, it's maybe more of like a personal motivation problem than it is something that, everybody deals with in the industry. But I think working for yourself in general, like having to learn how to do that is a skill that takes time to develop.
Agreed entirely. I'd like to say that I am the only asshole I can work for, but sometimes sometimes it's also just like, man, my phone didn't charge overnight, and I'm at 10% battery when I wake up. Like, today's fucked.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
just have to,
exactly.
like, I'm not going to sell anything today. No big deal.
Yeah, no, and
Uh,
you, as I said, like I've definitely kind of had to learn, like, okay, like even like now, with the holidays coming up, and I don't know if this is going live afterwards, but like, I've had a really busy week just trying to like get some ducks in a row so that I'm not posting anything on Instagram for a week. I'm not posting anything on eBay for a week, because I
right.
know from experience that if I do that, then I see a dip in my sales, or I see a dip in engagement on my social media, and that ends up hurting my bottom line. So
Totally.
yeah, it's definitely a juggling act,
Yeah,
for sure.
it
So
definitely is. And hopefully it usually happens for me, so I hope it happens to all of us doing this dumb shit for a living. We get a bump after the holidays.
yeah,
I
yeah, no,
think
for
people will
sure.
have money to spend, and
Yeah,
that's
no,
at
I mean,
least like something to look forward to.
absolutely. Yeah, no, and honestly, I've been blown away by this month. And I mean, I think part of that is I did kind of two markets this month, and people seem to have deep pockets right now, which I'm very thankful for. So
So yeah, if you've got
yeah,
the right stuff, they like people like it and
yeah,
want to enjoy it with you.
yeah.
So
And honestly, like, I don't know if this is a question, but just kind of on the flip side of like hardest part, like funnest part for me is this, like, especially starting to do these markets and being able to interact with my customers more face to face, is like being able to like help people like buy the clothes that they've always wanted to buy at a price point that's, affordable to them. That's like the most rewarding part of this job for me, is just like, because I'm someone who, always likes nice things and can't always afford them. So like to be able to kind of help pass along that, like, yeah, like you can be stylish, you can like what you like and still be able to afford it, whether it's secondhand or new. And that's the part that I really enjoy the most. So
The best, most earnest fucking answer.
yeah, I mean, I'm sure
100%,
you can
dude.
relate to it. Yeah,
Oh,
I'm sure
it
you can
totally.
relate to it.
Yeah.
Where it's like, you post something, or you have something hanging up and someone walks over and goes, "Whoa, this thing, like I've been looking for this thing for forever." I actually just had it recently where I was promoting the Alfargo's marketplace that I just sold at, and I posted as a little teaser. I put a little fit together on a mannequin, and one of the things I had on it was this Drake's tartan horsey coat. And somebody DM'd me and said, "Oh my God, I've been looking for that coat for 2 years. Like, what size is that?" And
Nice.
of course it was his size. And he's like, "I can't make it to the market, but can you ship it out to me?" And I was like, "You know what? Like, you seem very passionate about it. I feel bad that I'm not bringing it when I was advertising that I was bringing it. But at the same time, like, this guy was so excited to like find his grail, and I had to help him out with that. It's just, I can relate to that feeling. So
100%. So, Ken, what is the best picking find you've had, and also the flip side of that? I know you do a little bit of vintage, but like, what's the oldest thing that you found?
Yeah. Vintage is kind of something that, like, I dabble in recently, more so just doing these like markets and kind of having more affordable pieces to kind of appeal to different crowds. But I've always had an eye out for vintage. I do remember when I was living in Boston, I found a tailcoat that I believe was from the 30s or 40s, and that's definitely the oldest piece I've ever found. Not the most exciting because it was just kind of a piece of tailoring, but really
Yeah,
cool that it
totally.
had the date written out on it, and to see like, oh my gosh, this is so old. Of course, I've sold so many pieces, I wish I remembered things more clearly. In terms of like exciting finds, the one I always go to tell people about, because I have people, family members who will ask me like, "Oh, what's the craziest thing you found?" This had to have been around, it was 2014, I think. Um, so like peak kind of menswear, being into menswear on Tumblr, that kind of thing, and had seen this brand, Our Legacy, posted about, and looked at stuff online. There was this bomber coat that came out in spring of 2014. It was called like the extended zip bomber, because it was basically an MA1 bomber jacket, but the zipper went a little bit further than the hemline. And I remember
Okay.
thinking like, this is so cool. And one of these things I probably posted on my Tumblr, like, this is awesome, but would never be able to afford it. And fast forward, so it came out in the spring, and I definitely saw it then. And then in the fall, I was thrifting and I found it on a rack in a Goodwill, and it was literally from that same year, just like 3 or 4 months apart. And I was just mind blown that somebody would get rid of something that quickly. And that one stayed. It fit me, and it stayed in my closet for a long while. Eventually, didn't end up fitting me, and ended up being sold.
Yeah, yeah.
But that's one I point to. It's something that meant a lot to me, because I was really hyped about, like, this is like, me manifesting something that I saw on Tumblr and it like appearing in real life almost.
Right,
But there are
right.
some, there, in terms of like stuff I've sold for a lot of money, like there are like, I found a pair of Levi's Big E selvage from the late 60s. That was one of my highest sales for the longest time. One that's not that exciting and kind of a bummer that it's one of my highest sales is I found a Supreme box logo sweatshirt and sold that for a lot of money. And it's not something I'm particularly passionate about, though, so it's
Yeah,
kind of like not the first thing I list.
totally,
Um,
totally.
but yeah,
Everyone's got that.
yeah, exactly. Like, this made me the most money for sure, but it's not maybe the most exciting thing.
Right,
Um,
right.
but yeah, that's the Hall of Fame right there for sure. So
Solid. I like the our legacy story.
yeah, it was just one of those, I at the time, I think a lot of the thrifting I did was for more kind of traditional menswear, like sport coats, suiting, shirt, dress shirts, pants, and like to find something that was like, whoa, this is like, contemporary designer like streetwear piece that is sitting in a
Yeah.
thrift store right now. Mind blowing. And I mean, I kind of had a similar experience like the first time I found an engineer garments piece, which is, my favorite brand. And I mean, I found an engineer garments Bedford jacket at a thrift store in Boston, and that was like absolutely mind blowing. Of course, it was like, a size extra small and would never fit me if I dreamed of it, but it was still really cool. So, it's always blown away by the things you can find in thrift stores.
You have a favorite piece of yours in your wardrobe?
Yeah, I have a lot of things that I accumulate as you do when you sell clothes. I've honestly even hit the like point where I'm very specific and pass on a lot of things for myself because I, just know that, it's just going to be something else that sits. But like one of the things that I think I really, really enjoy in my closet is I have a engineer garments. They're my favorite brand, and I have from I believe it was their fall winter 2014 collection. I have one of their shawl collar. I think they called it the shawl collar knit coat, but it's
Oh yeah.
basically an oversized cardigan that has a belt and like the wood, kind of like the classic tweed coat buttons. And the fabric is it's a knit fabric, but it's a knit herringbone pattern, and it's in a gray, so it's like a light gray and a dark gray. To me, it's just like such a cool intersection of a lot of different menswear things, just like doing this like herringbone pattern, like it's a tweed but it's knit like a sweater, but then it's a shawl collar cardigan but it's oversized like a jacket, and then it's belted like a robe but it's also a jacket. Like it's just like kind of this confluence of all these things, and it's part of the reason why I love engineer garments so much, is seeing all of his inspirations in the pieces themselves. And that's one that, I'm honestly, with the life I live now, like I really don't wear that one very often. It maybe comes out of the closet 2 or 3 times a year, but it's one of those things I will never get rid of because it was, a sale season splurge of a piece that I just knew I had to have. And yeah, it'll always be with me. So
Yeah, I tried to work something into the intro with Daiki,
yeah.
because I knew how much you loved engineer garments. The best I could come up with was Daiki Dula, which doesn't really make
Nice.
any sense whatsoever.
No, it does not.
But
Oh man,
we
that's
we
funny.
spent what, Connor, like 20 minutes yesterday trying to figure that out.
That's
Like,
Yeah,
amazing.
we
yeah,
had a time. We had a time with it. It's a labor of love. It's a labor of love.
yeah,
So
Absolutely. No,
yeah.
I mean
Just
the engineer of garments is pretty good too. So,
okay.
but
Yeah,
but
I'm
yeah,
happy
that's
with that.
yeah.
Yeah,
But yeah, I
it's
definitely like I think like, if you're into or like about kind of vintage clothing or like the histories of menswear, like, and then you look at like contemporary menswear designers, I think engineer garments is one of those ones that like the influences are so clear, and it's just really fascinating what he does and like how he takes workwear and Ivy style and kind of combines it into something that's new, and then he plays with the silhouette so it feels like it's streetwear even though it's a repro of a military trouser.
yeah.
He's kind of updated the cut in the way that it feels contemporary.
And it's
uh
one of those things that like if you have a few things, you can work them into pretty much whatever the fuck you wear, and
Absolutely,
it
yeah.
and it goes well because like it's all all of the stuff and the ephemera and whatever that we're into, as far as like people into clothing, it all ties back to certain shit. And
Yeah.
so yeah, I think you said it great. Like he tends to meld all of the stuff that influenced him, and it can kind of work for a wide swath of people.
Oh yeah, no, I mean there's so many different ways that you can wear his stuff. And yeah, I think what you said too about kind of like being able to own just like a few pieces and still be able to wear it, because there's a lot of designers that or contemporary designers that I really appreciate, but I just can't like, you have to go in my mind, and maybe somebody more skilled than I can figure out a way around this, but like I really like double RL. I think he makes some really good, really amazing pieces. Ralph, and or like I really enjoy Capital. But my experience is like owning those pieces from those brands RL, there are some staples. Obviously, like flannel shirt is a flannel shirt. You'll always be able to work it into your wardrobe. But, owning kind of more of some of the more statement pieces from like brands like RL or Capital or kind of some of these more obscure Japanese brands, like you end up kind of having to go like whole hog on it. Otherwise, like you end up like feeling weird about it. In my experience, it's just maybe what I'm comfortable with. But like, for instance, like I've for a long while always wanted a Capital raincoat, which is kind of their crazy hooded pea coat, military inspired but funky fabrics, like really out there jacket. And in my head it was always like, oh, you could throw this on with like a standard workwear fit and it would look all right. And I actually got one in just this past year from a consigner, and I tried it on and it fit me. And I gave it some thought, like, do I want to buy this from my consigner? And as I started putting together some outfits with it, I said, I don't own weird enough clothes to make this work almost, which is saying something because I own some weird clothes. So, I and like, I think people who wear that stuff wear it well, but like, a lot of people who wear that stuff have to go all the way in on it. Visvim, I think, is one of those brands that I feel the same way about, where like I really appreciate their aesthetic, but if I were able to, spend all the money in the world to redo my budget, maybe I'd buy enough that I could, put together some outfits with it. But only being able to own a couple pieces is a challenge, when it comes to certain brands and certain styles, for sure.
For sure. I really think we could have had like a 45-minute conversation solely based on this last subject.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, for sure.
But yeah, man, Ken, dude, thank you for coming on. And we always give our guests a section to shout some stuff out. So have at it.
Yeah, I'm at StyleBitter on Instagram. That's kind of my main social media feed. Through there you can find my links to my Grail page and my eBay page. I sell secondhand and new sometimes, men's wear that kind of has a curated aesthetic. Sometimes it's vintage, sometimes it's new, and I'm also offer consignment. So if you're ever looking to clean out your closet or trade some stuff, I'm always down. So yeah, you can just find me on StyleBitter on Instagram or stylebitter.com. So
awesome. And what's the market that you do like pretty regular?
So Burlington Vintage Market, we do 2 or 3 times a year, and that's in Burlington, Vermont, and that's one that's awesome. And Alfargo's Marketplace, I know Shane has shouted them out on his episode, but highly recommend if you live in New York City, you go check out Alfargo's Marketplace, and you'll probably see me there in the future. So
awesome. Well, everyone, thanks for listening. I'm Matt Smith at Rebels Rogues.
And I'm Connor Fowler at Connor Fowler. And
yeah, if you have any feedback or questions, at Apocalypse Duds on Instagram, apocalypseduds@gmail.com. And yeah, we don't know if we've actually got an email yet, so feel free to shoot one our way. But yeah, Ken, thank you again, man. And
thank you guys. This was really fun.
Hell yeah.